All right. Welcome, everyone. We are going to give people a couple of minutes to join. I am very much looking forward to this conversation with our guest today. We just want to have people enter the main room and have a couple of intros, and we'll take it from there. Just as a reminder, as we're waiting, that please, as we go through the presentation, we are going to have a Q&A afterward, and we want you to put your questions in the Q&A box here on the screen. There's also a chat, and in the chat, we just want you to say, where you are dialing in from, and just so that we know a little bit more about what kind of audience we have here. But let's take it away, Renee. Okay, I am Anna Tavis, Department Chair for Human Capital Management Programs, and we are continuing with our Rethinking Work series. And there's nothing more urgent in organizations today than the discussions about skills-powered approaches to building organizations. So that's actually something that is creating a big, buzz and a lot of work in organizations, and many companies are trying to wrap their heads around how to do it right. And of all people, Ravin Jesuthasan, if I pronounce it right, Ravin, has just arrived from Singapore after 7 weeks on the road. He is a recognized futurist and authority on the future of work, human capital, and especially automation. He's also a senior partner and global leader for transformation services at Mercer, a leading consultancy. And he's also a member of the World Economics Forum Steering Committee on Work and Employment. He's written multiple books, but today we are going to focus on his very latest, the Skills-Powered Organization. So Ravin, take it away. I know on your, in the jet lag from Singapore, but we're really, really grateful. Let's listen to this, and then we're going to have a chat about what it all means to the future of work. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Renee. Thank you all for the privilege of your time and for the opportunity to just share some perspectives on my most recent book. As Anna said, The Skills-Powered Organization, The Journey to the Next Generation Enterprise. What I thought I might do over the next 30 minutes or so is to share a little bit about why skills, why now? What's the imperative for organizations to focus on skills? What that skills-powered organization actually looks like, what the design journey looks like to building a skills-powered organization, and what the prize associated with it is. You'll see as we talk through this, it's the pivot we're talking about from jobs to skills is a pretty significant one, but the prize associated with it is truly extraordinary. And I'll share a number of case studies with you as to what that prize has been like. Those of you who've read my previous 5 books know that I've had the privilege of collaborating with some incredible co-authors, John Boudreau from the University of Southern California, a number of my fellow faculty members at Caltech. But this book is actually really quite different. I jokingly like to say that, for the first time, I've written a book with someone who actually has a real job, because I'm a consultant. My previous authors have been academics. I think we don't really have real jobs because we have the fun and the privilege of being able to sort of analyze things deeply and look at organizations, but our clients have the challenge of actually implementing it. And so my co-author, Tanuj, is the Chief Strategy and Talent Officer at Standard Chartered Bank, a 170-year-old organization with an incredibly rich legacy. So being able to partner with her and show the change journey that they've gone through was really important to us, because we didn't want this to be just a book about theory and frameworks, but about practically how do you make this change happen and stick. So we'll talk through that as we go through the next few minutes or so. So firstly, a little bit around the context for skills. As Anna mentioned, I do a lot of work with the World Economic Forum. I've collaborated with them since 2014, so about 10 years now. And in Davos this year, Sam Altman was on a panel, and he said, maybe a little overstated, that at no time in human history has the velocity and volatility of change been what it is today. And 2 months later, the IMF came out with its uncertainty index, and they actually showed that uncertainty in the global economy was 2.5 times, not 2.5%, but 2.5 times what it has been for the last 30 years. And what that means is that organizations are having to navigate this polycrisis world, right? The combination of the dramatic and rapid advances in AI, the geopolitical crises that we have around the world, the impact of the climate crisis, which over the course of my last 7 weeks of traveling around the world, I think 3 times in 7 weeks, really having an opportunity to see that up front and close with many clients. And then certainly the energy transition that underpins our response to the climate crisis. All of these are changing work at scale and at a scale and speed that is previously we've never seen. And it's also why we have this need for a much smaller set of building blocks that can be pulled apart as demand changes and recombined as new demand emerges. Again, with skills being those building blocks, as opposed to the larger building blocks that don't allow for that agility, which is this thing called a job. So, and probably the most significant of these is the impact of AI on work. This was a piece of analysis that we did earlier this year for Davos, where my colleagues and I sort of ran a series of panels and discussions on the impact of AI. We took frameworks from my third book with John Boudreau, Reinventing Jobs, which focused on the impact of AI on work, and overlaid against that framework a bunch of new research from OpenAI and Brookings and Goldman Sachs, et cetera, to look at the impact of Gen AI on jobs. And you can see the dramatic impact, on the far left. But what's more interesting is when you look at how that impact is overlaid against the changing composition of work in the quote unquote average job. And you can see that the mix of work today, when you look at jobs across the economy globally, the mix of transactional versus relational versus expertise, and then how that mix is expected to change over the course of the next 3 years or so. And it's not inconceivable that within the next 10 years, we probably will have no humans in call centers because of the dramatic pace of not just generative AI, but 2 things: how generative AI is building on our legacy advances in robotic process automation and machine learning, and more importantly, where we're headed to with agentic AI. And you can see how those technologies also start to overlay not just the transactional work that we might often see in contact centers, but also the relational and expertise-driven work, and how they're increasingly augmenting the work of humans in those domains. And all of these are causing skill premiums to shift dramatically and with great volatility. Skills that we were talking about. Remember when prompt engineering was going to be this big job, right? Well, it never became a job because it became a key part of everything that everyone does, right? And I think that's one of the things that we really need to be in tune for as we think about skills, is this recognition that the old days of building a workforce for just in time have rapidly given way to building a workforce for just in case. A workforce that has both the technical and the human skills to be able to pivot in multiple directions rapidly, and with access to the learning resources to be able to close those gaps at scale and speed. So hopefully that context is helpful. I want to maybe drill into what that skills-powered organization looks like. And the reason why I think this is truly compelling is because what we've seen is the need for every organization to fundamentally bend the demand curve of work in a fundamentally different way, answering that first question of how do we redesign work to make it more human-centric as opposed to process-centric, and enabling talent to flow to opportunities as they emerge, because every one of us, every organization is going to need to break from its legacy of where growth was accompanied by growing resource intensity. We just don't have the tolerance for that, particularly in a world which is increasingly volatile. Our ability to absorb fixed cost it shrinks dramatically in that environment. So of bending the demand curve of work in a fundamentally different way, but equally bending the supply curve of work in a very different way, making our work ever more accessible to more and more talent. And, one of the poster children, I think, for this journey is IBM. I wrote about IBM in my second book, Lead the Work, Navigating a World Beyond Employment. We had the privilege of partnering with the incredible leader who is Diane Gearson, a friend and a colleague for many, many years, who's just done some innovative work, both at her time at IBM, but since then in her role on a number of different boards, to open the aperture, making skills the currency for work and moving beyond just the traditional marker of competence, which was that degree. And I think today, over 60% of IBM's jobs have no degree requirement, which is a pretty remarkable statistic when you consider the legacy of the organization, when you consider its legacy of being able to tap the best talent from the best universities and command that talent, in very competitive marketplaces. And so think about this as bending both the demand and supply curves of work to ensure that we've got an organization that is both agile, efficient, and has continuous growth in productivity of its workforce. And at the heart of why skills are the answer, and you'll see some of this in some of the case studies I'll share shortly, is it's really about answering 4 questions, which are across the bottom of the organization. One is, do we have mechanisms in place to translate changing customer demand in a volatile world rapidly to the work that's being done and to the skills required to do the work? So having a picture of the demand side of the equation, that's not just about how many people do I need in a job. The old days of strategic workforce planning, where it was largely position-based planning, just no longer a fit for purpose. And that's where again, these smaller building blocks of skills become critically important to be able to quantify and translate demand for work into the specific skills, human and technical, that are required. So that's the demand side of the equation. On the supply side, do we understand the supply of skills and capabilities that we have today, whether those skills are from employees, gig workers, contractors, etc., or those are capabilities provided by machines, whether it's process automation, machine learning, Gen AI, agentic AI. Once we've understood the demand and supply sides, how do we close those gaps? How do we ensure that we're developing those skills and capabilities rapidly and on a real-time basis? And then lastly, ensuring that we are deploying those skills back to work productively and quickly. And what that calls for is a pretty radical rethink of the entire talent life cycle and the role of HR itself. Some of you may know I've written extensively about this pivot in the role of HR from being a steward of employment, ensuring the silent running of the enterprise with enough people, the right jobs available at the right time and the right cost, to increasingly being a steward of work, orchestrating a complex work ecosystem that includes humans in a variety of work engagement mechanisms, as well as AI and process automation. So these 4 questions to me are absolutely pivotal because they ensure that you've got a workforce architecture that is acutely attuned to the changing economic model of the organization. And the only way you get there is when you've got this common currency of skills underpinning this connection. As I mentioned at the beginning, I had the privilege of partnering with Tanuj, my co-author, who is absolutely an extraordinary leader, because in addition to being the Chief Strategy and People Officer at StanChart, she's also on the board of directors at Sainsbury's, which is the largest retailer in the UK, and is on the board of the National Health Trust in the UK, helping them with the transformation of a truly complex healthcare system that needs to have much greater agility and much more AI enabling their operating model. And the thing that was fascinating about the journey that they were on was they started with a number. Tanuj showing her board that they could save 50,000 British pounds by reskilling talent from their sunset roles to their sunrise roles. That prompted this journey of that you see on this slide. It started again with that true strategic plan, workforce plan of how do we transition talent en masse as we think about resourcing a business that is going to finance the transition to net zero. And asking the question of how will we do that? What are the machine implications for that versus the human implications? How do we ensure that we're bringing the workforce along on that journey? And the three phases they went through are what you see on the slide. Firstly, building this learning habit. You can't bring your talent along unless skill development is part of your operating model and part of your strategy, not the thing that HR does on its own, not the thing that your people do at 10 o'clock at night when the kids are in bed and I've got the opportunity to acquire some new skills, but actually designing in space for learning into the flow of work. Secondly, being truly focused on what are those priority or pivotal roles that are going to emerge as the business changes. And what are the roles or skills that are going to, to be de-emphasized as the business model changes? And can we transition talent en masse? And how do we make skills and embed skills deeply into the fabric of the organization? So it's not just something that employees are focused on when they grow, but that business leaders are focused on as they think about running the business, that HR has an architecture that supports its development, and ensuring, as you see on the right-hand side, that we've got a talent portfolio or a talent architecture that enables the answering of those 4 questions that we saw on this previous slide, right? What are the skills we need? How do we resource that demand? How do we ensure we're closing those gaps? And then deploying skills back to work at scale and speed. Now, one of the frameworks that we spend a fair bit of time in the book talking about is what you see on this slide, because it's where you start to see organizations shifting and enabling skills to be the currency for work. So let me unpack this a little bit. On the far left is how work has been done for the better part of 140 years, right? That one-to-one relationship between a person and a position. Now, jobs or fixed roles aren't going away anytime soon, but we have more and more organizations, again, thinking about bending the demand and supply curves of work, asking the question of where does it make sense to have that dedicated full-time position in a person in a position? And increasingly, the answer is where the talent imperative is one of control. If you think of your airline pilots or your drillers on oil rigs, there is such a premium on control, on ensuring compliance, and on ensuring that there are no mistakes, on ensuring that there are high levels of proficiency in those roles. And there is such a premium to someone growing in those roles and steadily acquiring proficiency over a multi-decade career. But increasingly, organizations looking for, how do I drive more flexibility? How do I create the flexibility for talent across my organization to deploy their skills in new domains, or a data scientist who might be captive in IT, taking on projects to develop a new workforce planning module with HR, to support the customer organization in mining customer data for greater insights, or having the flexibility to go acquire new skills. Someone in finance who maybe has a passion for DEI and an opportunity to take on a project with the HR function. And this is where we start to see this hybrid state of both jobs and skills being the currency for work. But the talent imperative there is not one of control. It's about capacity management and driving productivity. And then on the far right, the flow model, where I think of that as being agile on steroids, where talent might be all employees, but they're just not captive in a job within a function. And this is particularly relevant when you need certain skills across the operating model. Could be data science, it could be program managers, it could be scrum masters, where you don't want them captive in IT or finance, but you need them flowing to opportunities as they emerge. And this is where what you start to see is the imperative shifting towards capability deployment at scale and speed. Now, certainly the direction of travel broadly, globally, is from left to right, but every organization is going to need all three of these models in play if you are, in fact, going to bend the demand and supply curves of work differentially. You are, in fact, going to be that agile enterprise. And this is where I think the work of human capital leaders gets to be truly interesting, because instead of that legacy one-size-fits-all model, what you now have are three truly fit for purpose operating models for your workforce. So a lot of work, right? You know, particularly if you think of, I had one model for organizing work and connecting talent to it. Now you're telling me I've got to have three. But the juice is truly worth the squeeze. And here are, just 5 examples that I hope will be helpful. One is the productivity gains that we're seeing. It is really, really difficult, guys, to overstate the inefficiency that is built up in this thing called a job. And throughout my years, I've done this for coming on 35 years, I have had the opportunity with the organizations I've worked for, and most recently, my organization, Mercer, has the largest global jobs database in the world, to be able to look at how job descriptions and what's asked of talent in jobs has changed. There is so much built-in inefficiency associated with that. And so as one example, and this is a case study in the book. In fact, virtually all of these are case studies in the book. An organization and a large global insurer that moved all their data scientists from that fixed model to the flow model got to a 600% gain in productivity over 18 months. That is an absolutely, kind of stating the blindingly obvious, eye-opening statistic. But it points to the inefficiency that can be overcome by moving to these more agile ways of working. To the point of agility, speed and agility as you move from left to right, as we have skills as the currency for work, really one of the big advantages. Big consumer products organization, as they moved into the flexible model, avoiding the need to hire 214 more people because they were able to because they were able to do 2 things: get better insight into the skills of the talent they already had, and then secondly, deploy those skills to work much more efficiently and effectively. Thirdly, reduce time and cost to fill. Every CHRO I've ever worked with over the last 35 years has consistently said our people tell us it's easier to find opportunities elsewhere than within our own company. And that's where, as we start to make skills the currency for work, we get much greater insight into where are those skills available across the organization. And the large bank here, I mentioned Standard Chartered, with their savings of £50,000 per employee by reskilling and upskilling talent from the sunset to the sunrise roles. Much greater employee engagement, the ability to say, I'm not going to limit your growth to just moving vertically or horizontally, but rather I'm going to introduce this notion of, as my colleague Paul Habgood says, squiggly careers, right? So the unique bundle of skills that's Anna versus Renee versus Ravin, and the countless ways in which those skills could be deployed to opportunities across the organization where those skills are demanded. And then lastly, improve profitability. And it ties back to that first point about productivity. One of the examples in the book is of an oil and gas company where they were able to improve their profitability by 45% without headcount reductions, as they reskilled talent from very manual, error-prone jobs into increasingly a machine-augmented environment. So, again, I hope these are compelling reasons for why this journey is one that every organization should consider. But it's important to understand two things, right? One is, what are the core capabilities of that skills-powered organization, the things that you need to be really good at so you can do this well? And then secondly, how do you eat the elephant, right? Because you've got to eat it one bite at a time. So how do you get started? And so let's maybe unpack both of those. As we looked at the various organizations we profiled in our book, not just Standard Chartered, but numerous other organizations, three things consistently came out, and they really are the underpinnings of those four questions you saw at the beginning. The first is this notion of work design. Every business leader is going to need to understand how he or she designs work, because the options we have today are exponentially greater than the ones we've had even 2 or 3 years ago. Understanding what's the demand for work based on changing customer demand, what's the supply of skills and capabilities, and how do I ensure the optimal design of humans and machines working together in an increasingly AI-augmented operating model. So that's the work design piece. Second part of that is, how do we ensure that we are developing talent at scale and speed? And it's not the thing that we do when budgets are good. It's not the thing we ask people to do on Saturday night when the kids are in bed, but it's truly a systemic part of our operating model. How do we design in space for learning into the flow of work? Tapping in, particularly with the advances in Gen AI, I think it's made the opportunities to develop skills much more efficient, much more effectively, and not just through personalization, but true contextualized learning that's contextualized to the specific work that needs to be done. And then thirdly, so we're not just doing development for the sake of development, but that we can deploy skills back to work at scale and speed through those three models. Where does it make sense for those skills to be deployed to work through a fixed job versus a flexible role versus the flow model? So 3 core capabilities. And before we go to Anna with questions, I want to end with how you can get started. And we ended the book, the last chapter of the book, chapter 8, is with these 3 things. Because this journey to making skills is a truly compelling one, but it's also one in my work with clients where it feels like it's the blind man and the elephant, right? It's every different HR or business leader touches it and they feel something different. And what we've seen is 3 things that successful organizations do. One is they are absolutely anchored in a multi-year North Star, a North Star that quantitatively defines what are the productivity, agility, velocity, efficiency gains that we're going to get from this. Because unless there is a clear economic business case, your leaders are going to sort of lose interest really quickly. I've lost count the number of times that HR has started with, we need better career journeys, or we need better career mobility. And it has died a quick death because the economic reason for that mobility has not been articulated clearly enough. But it's not just about anchoring it in that economic journey. It has to be anchored in, what will this look like in terms of changes to HR processes, in terms of changes to business processes, and what will it feel like to our leaders, our people managers, and our employees? And then lastly, what are the foundations that we need to have in place to ensure that this is a journey that is sustainable? And the 2 that I consistently see coming up are, you absolutely have to have a foundation of robust skills data. You're going to see in a second a maturity curve that we developed that's in the book. And then secondly, the pivotal role of AI. AI is both the trigger for this, as we talked about in the beginning, but also the enabler for this, in terms of being able to help an organization shift from that one-to-one relationship between a degree, a person in a position, to the many-to-many between skills and work, and the numerous ways in which different nano and micro upskilling and reskilling opportunities solutions can be deployed to closing skill gaps. So North Star being the important piece. Second part of this is starting narrow and shallow. As I said at the beginning, you've got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And you never want to do anything that threatens the operational integrity of an organization. So how do we start narrow, i.e. with a limited number of business problems that we can solve for and show those economic gains I talked about on the previous slide? What are those business problems, those different domains that we can solve with skills as the currency for work? Secondly, what is the one HR process that we're going to take and rework end to end so the organization starts to see how this works? For many organizations, it's either the talent acquisition process or the internal mobility process. I'm not saying that to the exclusion of any others, but that's often where many organizations start. And what you see here is, as I mentioned, getting the foundations right are important. As you get the foundation and AI foundations right, as you move from left to right, how do your human capital processes evolve? And you can see that evolution here across the ones processes we looked at. Workforce planning to me is a great example because it really starts to move from being this administrative process about resourcing to a true strategic process that underpins the operating plan because you've got the skills data and now the ability to engage in integrated capability and economic planning. So I'm hoping this maturity curve is helpful. Again, remembering starting narrow and shallow. And then the last slide, a couple of slides I'll leave you with, how do we pull on all of the change levers? I've seen so many organizations where, it's a very human thing where we get seduced by the bright, shiny object, often in the form of technology. So let me throw tech at the problem. And the good news is that tech has gotten so good and it's evolved so quickly, but it is only one of 8 different enablers that I think have to be addressed. You can see the other 4 on these next 2 slides, the role of leaders, ensuring that they are aligned to this journey, because we've told them for decades that the way they become great leaders, the way they move up, is to hoard the best talent, ensure that your best talent is not moving to another part of the team. Continuously grow your team, because then you get, a bigger organization and more pay, etc. And now we're saying, no, we want you to be actually sharing your talent, and we're going to measure you based on impact beyond your function and your budget. Governance, global guidelines for, skills taxonomy and deploying talent, ensuring your employees are part of this journey, that they are actively participating, that they have the space and the incentives to engage, transforming your culture. Again, it's really difficult to overstate what a momentous shift this can be, hence the need for narrow and shallow on the previous slide. The role of HR. We've seen that insurance company I talked about that got to a 600% gain in productivity. One of the key enablers for their journey was HR standing up a new center of expertise to teach managers how to design projects as they moved their data scientists from the fixed to the flow model. Rethinking all of our functional processes, how we account for, how we budget. Certainly technology and AI, which is where many tend to start. And then lastly, those foundational enablers, your skills taxonomy, how you validate skills and, the proficiency levels, the assessments, etc. So I'm hoping this is a helpful primer before we maybe jump into questions, Anna. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was very comprehensive, and it is definitely the topic that is front and center for HR, even as AI is dominating the conversation. When you get to the HR organizations, that's where they often stumble. Where do we start? How do we go about it? Before I read out the questions, and there are quite a few, just an announcement to all, we are going to share the recording, so you can definitely go back and review. Do you have any specific recommendations or comments on the whole ecosystem of new companies that emerge that offer their services in terms of creating skills taxonomies, helping organizations that might not have internal, like IBM, Diane Gerson has been working on this her entire career. They have the internal expertise, but many companies don't know where to start. They point out to Workday, and it's not sufficient. Can you make recommendations around engaging with technology partners on that topic?
Yeah, so there's a whole ecosystem of organizations who sort of provide different elements of the solution, right? So on the one hand, skills taxonomy, there's a lot of available resources. The World Economic Forum has its skills taxonomy that's easily available. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what my own organization has. So the Mercer Skills Edge Suite has a skills library. It has a skills mapper that maps skills to jobs for organizations based on the evolving nature of work. It also has a skills pricer that enables organizations to understand the market value of different skills for that occur in combination. And then there are also this ecosystem of tech providers, Anna, as you alluded to. So organizations like Eightfold and Gloat and TechWolf, just to name a couple, that provide different elements of the solution, from insights into what skills your people have, which you often, in large companies, you don't really know, to understanding the demand for skills, to mapping and creating a marketplace for matching those skills to work. And then the other solution, I would say, again, selfishly and parochially, that we've taken to market, it's the Mercer Work Design solution. It actually helps organizations redesign work at scale and speed, taking a job and a workflow, deconstructing it, analyzing the different options available, what work can be sent to Gen AI, where can Gen AI augment, and then reconstructing new and different jobs, all the while highlighting the shifting skill premiums. So great question to start with, Anna. There's so many tools available out there that make the lift light, but I will also remind that group, as I said earlier, the tech and the data is one out of these 8 change enablers to ensuring the journey is one that's sustainable for the organization.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravin. Very helpful. And definitely the entire HR organization needs to at least be aware of what's happening, so the education happens not just at the level of experts. And where do you think, in addition to this, where do you think that work sits in the organization? Who is responsible for creating these skills taxonomies to drive the transformation that you just laid out for us?
So this only works, Anna, when it's a combination of HR and the business. I go back to my earlier comment, right, about HR shifting its mandate from being a steward of employment to being a steward of work and an orchestrator of how talent is connecting to work. And so when it comes to skills, and you're starting with the skills taxonomy, ensuring that the business is fully a part of this, because the business particularly is going to need to own what are the technical skills that are being demanded, and how do we have a consistent definition and nomenclature for those technical skills? While perhaps HR drives more of the conversation around the human skills, the transferable skills that are required across the organization to get work done. And I saw in the chat, Anna, one of the questions around are we approaching a post-expert world?
Yes.
And the answer is absolutely not, right? I'll go back to that shifting composition of work. Expertise is always going to be required, but the challenge is expertise as defined by the specific technical skills. That expertise, the half-life of those technical skills is shrinking really dramatically. And so increasingly what we need, it's an and, right? Not an or. This and of these human skills, critical thinking, learning agility, the ability to look around corners and see what's coming next, the ability to connect technical skills in one domain to doing work in another domain. How do I take my background as a finance person and translate that into the work of HR? Or how do I take my insights into managing HR programs, into thinking about how our customer experiences are managed? And I think that's where the challenge on each of us and as individuals and leaders is for an increasingly multi-skilled workforce. And the only way we're going to stay relevant is having the curiosity and the desire to keep acquiring new technical skills in addition to building those human skills.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I want to connect it to another question that just came in from Edie Goldberg. And she's asking how you manage this multi-skilled portfolio of employee experience, because there will be some employees that still in fixed roles and vis-a-vis those who are already flowing to these projects, et cetera. So there will be different maturity levels of kind of skills in organizations. So how do you manage the experience of those employees? And it might also connect to another question about the role of the manager in this type of transitional environment.
Yeah, great question, Edie, and nice to hear from you. So I do think that even as work is organized in these three models, the talent need not be captive to each model, right? So if you're in the fixed model, it doesn't mean you stay there forever, because you might say, well, actually, I want to go in a different direction. I'll go back to that airline pilot, right? Who says, I'm in that fixed role, but I want to pivot elsewhere. And there may be, some folks who want to stay in those roles, right? But the opportunity across particularly large organizations or organizations who are part of networks to be able to provide opportunities for talent to move out, and having that visibility and transparency to those opportunities, right, I think is really important. And that's where, coming back to the first question you asked, Anna, the technology is incredibly helpful in terms of providing visibility to those opportunities, showing people skill adjacencies, directing learning resources so people can close skill gaps and increase the number of opportunities that they then have available.
So there's a specific question from Daphne here about talent acquisition. She's asking it still seems that hiring managers favor candidates who have done the jobs before over candidates who have the skills to, but demonstrated in a different role, a different domain. So what will be your recommendation to HR business partner who wants to encourage hiring managers to adopt this skills first mindset?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question, Daphne. I'll go back to that statistic, right? And when I mentioned that one number that Standard Chartered started with, what was inherent in that one number, and something that many of you have probably already figured out, is that in the old days, when I had a change in my business model driven by changing customer demand or regulation, I would do a riff over here and eliminate a bunch of people with legacy skills. And then I would go out and hire a bunch of people with the new skills. Problem is, given the velocity and volatility of change, I can't do, a riff every 6 months, right? Any business is just going to collapse because of that. So the imperative for us to reskill talent becomes even greater. What was inherent in that 50,000 pounds or $60,000 number was that it was taking people who are already within the culture about 3 to 6 months to acquire the technical skills and deploy those skills profitably and productively, versus the newer talent was taking close to 3 years to understand the culture of the organization, to build a network, to know how to get stuff done. So while they might be proficient technically, from a human perspective, they lacked all of the enabling skills that were required to operate in that operating model. And that's true of every single organization. I'm not saying that, acquiring new talent is bad. It's always, you need to sort of pull on all of the levers, right? But increasingly giving visibility to how quickly can people get up to speed and which is the path of least resistance. And very often it's upskilling people in the technical skills, because the human skills take so much longer to acquire.
Yes, excellent. And well, the last question, and there are quite a few, but I think you answered them in your presentation. It comes from one of our students. Christopher is asking, from the educational perspective, how to stay ahead and continue to be a valued talent on the job market and everywhere else. Should one focus more on breadth of skill and learn how to flex between different domains, or still focus on expertise and go deep into a particular skill? So which will be the top priority for students preparing themselves for the next generation workplace?
I hate to say it, Anna, because it's going to be an and, right?
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be an or. I think for anyone sort of that next generation of talent, you've absolutely got to be prepared for the fact that some of the technical skills you've acquired, or that you've placed an emphasis for, may not have the shelf life that you expected. And so being able to sort of ensure that you've got the curiosity, the learning agility, the willingness to sort of take those skills and pivot them into different domains to acquire different skills, I think is going to be absolutely essential.
Thank you so much. I just want to, again, encourage everyone to look at Ravin's books, the articles. There's, we sent the website link to everyone here, and the recording from this webinar is going to be distributed to all who participated. There's still a number of questions there, but I am sure that you will be able to see the answers and greater length, and just follow Ravin on LinkedIn. I know that you post a lot of your work on an ongoing basis. So you definitely move to the flow model in your own job. Thank you all so much. We will see you at our next meeting. And please stay tuned to our announcements. And on this note, have a great holiday, everyone, and we'll see you soon again. Thank you, Ravin.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Renee.